जातां सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितां तां सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजना सहितं कृष्ण चैतन्य देवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादां सहगणा ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधो जगत्पते गोपेशा गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचना गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधारा श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 रामा राम राम हरे हरे. Please recite. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयम् उदीरये नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवतीर्नैष्टिकी कृष्णाय कृष्णदेवाय देवकी नन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः नमः पङ्कजनाभाय नमः पङ्कजमालिने नमः पंकजनेत्राय नमस्ते पंकजांग्रहे नमो महावदन्याय गो कृष्ण प्रेम प्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नाम्ने गौरीतषे नमः नमो ब्राह्मण्याय देवाय गो ब्राह्मणाहिताय च जगद्दिताय कृष्णाय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः नमो ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण प्रेम प्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिन इति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधारा श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Shri Vishnu, Shri Vishnu. Hare Krishna to all the devotees. Lined up early in the morning for the Srimad Bhagavatam class. Um, Today we will continue with the reading of Srimad Bhagavatam, the Canto 7, Chapter 2. In the previous class, Subharav Prabhuji had completed up to verse 48. And the chapter again is in a more of a story form, and the entire seventh canto centers around this conversation between Yudhishthir Maharaj and Narada Muni at the Rajasuya sacrifice. There are some questions there, and chapter 2 deals with starts with the story of with the question of on Hiranyakashipu, and here we see how Hiranyakashipu is extremely angry at the beginning of the chapter when he learns of Hiranyaksha, his brother, being killed by Lord Vishnu, by Varaha. And through that chapter, um, yeah. So the chapter narrates the aftermath of Hiranyaksha's death by Lord Varaha. Hiranyakashipu is in great grief and rage over his brother's death. And this leads to his enmity with Lord Vishnu. The chapter also highlights, the demoniac mentality, its destructive plans, and the entire disruption that is caused by Hiranyakashipu. In those first 49 verses, actually, there is a lot of reflection for all of us, and I'm sure we all can relate it to the Kali Yuga, the modern world we live in, where there is no dearth of people with a demoniac mentality. And we see that, of course, just like Hiranyakashipu tries to create this disruption targeting brahmanas and all the pious things in the world, so that essentially with a single-minded goal to to eliminate Lord Vishnu. That is his only goal that he has. But the chapter also ends up actually, with some very, very poignant and strong philosophical insights, which we are pretty familiar with. When Hiranyakashipu tries to console his family by quoting allegorical stories and historical stories, essentially, about the permanence and the immortality, the eternality of the soul, and the futility of lamentation that we often indulge in when we lose someone who's close to us. So through those verses, the first 49 verses, Hiranyakashipu, he teaches his family about the difference between the body and the soul, emphasizing on the eternal nature of the soul. And in the previous class, as touched upon by Subbarao Prabhu, he narrates the story of King Suyagna, who is a very, very brave and valorous king who dies in battle, and his wives are grieving over him. And as it is the practice, the customary practice to cremate the body, a body that has a soul that has left the body in the daytime, the practice is to cremate it by sunset. And as sunset is approaching, the wives are very reluctant, or they are not even thinking about the cremation, rather they are only lamenting, keeping the body on their lap. And their lamentation is so loud, it's heard by Yamaraja, who comes down as a young boy and preaches some philosophy to the wives, wherein he narrates this story. And then we are now actually in the concluding part of this chapter, wherein another story is narrated about a Kulinga bird. So there is two Kulinga birds, a male Kulinga bird and a female Kulinga bird. And again here, the female Kulinga bird is trapped or lured by a hunter. And the male Kulinga bird begins to grieve for the female Kulinga bird. And in that process, actually ends up getting killed by the hunter. And this is used to explain the illusory nature of material attachments. So verses 49 to 61 essentially conclude, Hiranyakashipu's consoling instructions to his nephews and his sister-in-law and his mother, uh, leading to some philosophical reflections for them and the resolution of the grief among his family members. So now we'll start with reading through these verses, and what I will do is I will share my screen. Please let me know if you are able to see my screen, please. Hare Krishna. Can anyone see my screen? Am
Yes,
I
sure.
visible?
You can see.
Thank you, Prabhu. So we'll begin with text 49, and I think we should be able to complete the verses and the translations. There are not many purports in this particular section. This is the final section of the chapter. But I would encourage all of you to just reflect on the overall story itself and on the verses that conclude with this chapter, in terms of how we could you know imbibe some of the uh, messages that are being conveyed here on understanding, or actually understanding that we are not this body, and on the impermanence nature of this material life. So we'll start with uh, text 49. अथ नित्यम् अनित्यं वा नेह शोचन्ति तद्विदः नान्यथा साक्यते कर्तुम् स्वभाव शोचताम् इति. Translation: those who have full knowledge of self-realization, who know very well that the spirit soul is eternal, whereas the body is perishable, are not overwhelmed by lamentation. But persons who lack knowledge of self-realization certainly lament. Therefore, it is difficult to educate a person in illusion. Purport: according to the Mimamsa philosophers, everything is eternal, Nitya. And according to the Sankhya philosophers, everything is Mithya or Anitya, impermanent. Nonetheless, without real knowledge of Atma, the soul, such philosophers must be bewildered and must continue to lament as Shudras. Srila Sukadeva Goswami therefore said to Parikshit Maharaj, Shrotavyadini Rajendra Nrinam Shanti Sahasrashaha Apashyatam Atma Tattvam Griheshu Grihamedhinam. Those who are materially engrossed, being blind to knowledge of the ultimate truth, have many subjects for hearing in human society, O Emperor. Bhagavatam 2.1.2. For ordinary persons engaged in material activities, there are many subject matters to understand, because such persons do not understand self-realization. So essentially here it's about, the message that is being given is on the eternal nature of the soul, and the fact that those who do not, who understand this fact, do not lament for the body, which is perishable. In the Bhagavad Gita, 2.24, Krishna says, Nitya sarva gata sthanur achalo yam sanatanaha. So true knowledge eradicates lamentation. We need to keep that in mind. Whereas ignorance keeps us in a cycle of grief. And therefore, we need to think about detachment. But we also need to keep in mind that detachment and attachment are two sides of the same coin. So one does not happen without the other. Just like when we see, we have young children, they often are crying. They want something. And the way to deviate them is give them something better. And the moment you give them something else, they stop crying for the earlier thing, right? And similarly, we also need to focus on the Supreme Lord. And in this Kali Yuga, there is no other better method to do this other than chanting the holy name, as given to us by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, and the more we engage ourselves in Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, and remembering the Lord, the more we start getting detached from this material world and the material life. But also on the other side, our attachment to that higher purpose continues to increase. So we'll continue reading. Does anyone want to read the verse and the translation? Hare Krishna. Okay, I will continue reading. Text 50. Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhuji. Do you want me to read the text now?
Yeah, you can read the text and the translation, Prabhu.
1 second. Yeah. Translation and purpose by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. There was once a hunter who lured birds with food and captured them after spreading a net. He lived as if appointed by the death personified as the killer of the birds. Purport. Can you bring it up? Yeah.
Yes, Prabhu.
This is another incident from the histories.
Yes, Prabhu. So here another story is being narrated to convince, and it's in line with the earlier story, but here the example that's being given is of the two birds, and around the story of how, as I had mentioned, that, the hunter lures the birds with food and captures them by spreading a net. And then what happens? So we'll continue reading. Text 51.
Yeah.
Pulling.
Translation. While wandering in the forest, the hunter saw a pair of Kulinga birds. Of the two, the female was captivated by the hunter's lure.
Then we'll continue reading here. It's because it's in a story format.
Yeah.
Text 52. Does anyone want to read? Yeah.
I'll read Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Yes, Mataji.
Translations and purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Text 52. O queens of Suyagna, the male Kulinga bird, seeing his wife put into the greatest dangers in the grip of Providence, became very unhappy. Because of affection, the poor bird, being unable to release her, began to lament for his wife.
Yes. So here the bird's lamentation, it mirrors our own attachment to material relationships. And this arises due to this whole concept of I, me, and mine. When we come into this world, at that point, that attachment is non-existent, or at least it's not very, very obviously shown. So we don't have that identification that I am Indian, or I am brown, or I'm white. A child that is born in an abroad country, an Indian kid who might be born in an Australia or in America, might more connect themselves to be American rather than Indian. Similarly, that entire conception of being of a particular race, color, or gender also, it actually comes as we start understanding that through our senses and perceiving who we are and what we are in a wrong way, having forgotten our true eternal constitutional position, which is to be the servant of God. And here, when we see this male Pulinga bird, with seeing his wife put into the greatest danger in the grip of providence, became very unhappy. And the reason for that is this material attachment. In one of the earlier verses in this chapter, Srila Prabhupada, actually the translation itself mentions that, it's like when we come into this world, it's like coming to a restaurant where, different people come, they eat, and then they disperse, and then they go on. Similarly, we also come into this world due to our material afflictions and due to our material desires, coupled with the karma that we have acquired from our past lives. And therefore, to fulfill our material desires, we acquire a particular kind of body. And the moment that, that particular body's purpose has been served, the soul departs. And we have seen this, suddenly we have seen people leave this material world and leave this material body, even though they might be hale and hearty or healthy. Suddenly they acquire a terminal illness comes out of the blue. So, for example, we say that, cancer comes to people who smoke. But then there are so many non-smokers also who get cancer. And there is no explanation for this. It's all a divine plan that is being enacted. And the moment that body's purpose has been served, the soul leaves the body and goes away. But the people around that body continue to lament for it. So even in this chapter, when the queens are grieving, they say that that the body is lying. He says the body is lying right in front of you. Why are you grieving for it? So the grief is due to that material attachment and that affliction. And this is where, we need to understand what should be our priorities, and understand what is our constitutional position and what is our true purpose. Who sustains us? It's only Krishna that is sustaining us in this material world. And while we might think that, the other day I was speaking with my boss. He is Swiss, and I was asking him, what are his retirement plans and stuff. And a lot of Swiss people usually, because the Swiss tax structure it's based on not income but wealth. So even if you have a house, you have to end up paying taxes. So after you retire, and if you have a huge house, you will end up paying taxes, which kind of doesn't make, it's not very intuitive, right? Because then if you don't have income, how do you pay taxes? And so a lot of people actually, once they come to that old age, they actually, in Switzerland, but they go to other countries like Thailand, etc. And he was telling me that, he might go to Thailand. And but he said, I need to take care of one thing, which is, medical insurance. And I was just thinking inside, medical insurance is important, but can it prevent, or can it prevent what will have to happen? And we have seen this so many times. People have a lot of money, people have the best access to healthcare, but when the time comes, nobody is able to hold back that soul from departing from the body. So, but again, we are caught up in this material world thinking that we can control the most certain event that is going to happen, which is death. That we will be able to delay it, or we will be able to avoid it. But it is a false illusion. But we are led into believing that we can do it. Let's continue reading text 53. Aho akaruno deva striya karunaya vibhuhu kripanam mam anushocantya dinaya kim karishyati. Translation: Alas, how merciless is Providence! My wife, unable to be helped by anyone, is in such an awkward position and lamenting for me. What will Providence gain by taking away this poor bird? What will be the profit? So here the bird is continuing to lament and kind of blame Providence that I'm getting very unlucky. And we often also tend to do such things when wrong things happen to us. When something unfortunate happens, we think, why is it happening to me? It should not be happening to me. And in that way, we actually end up spending valuable, precious time lamenting on something which is not worth that lamentation. We start contemplating about it, and we get caught in that vicious cycle wherein we are not able to get out of that contemplation. And in turn, actually, we forget, or we go more deeper and far away, forgetting our own constitutional position. Text 54. Kamam nayatu mam devaha kim ardhenatmano hime dinena jivata dukkham anena vidurayusasha. Translation: If unkind Providence takes away my wife, who is half my body, why should he not take me also? What is the use of my living with half of my body bereaved by loss of my wife? What shall I gain in this way? So the lamentation of the bird continues, and as much as it is useless to lament, the bird continues to lament, thinking about, how will I live without my wife? So we'll continue reading the story. Text 55. Katham tva ajata pakshamstan matrahinan vibharmyaham mandabhagya pratikshante nide me mataram prajaha. Translation: The unfortunate baby birds, bereft of their mother, are waiting in the nest for her to feed them. They are still very small and have not yet grown their wings. How shall I be able to maintain them? Purport. The bird is lamenting for the mother of his children because the mother naturally maintains and cares for the children. Yamaraja, however, in the guise of a small boy, has already explained that although his mother left him uncared for and wandering in the forest, the tigers and other ferocious animals had not eaten him. The real fact is that if the Supreme Personality of Godhead protects one, even though one be motherless and fatherless, one can be maintained by the goodwill of the Lord. Otherwise, if the Supreme Lord does not give one protection, one must suffer in spite of the presence of his father and mother. Another example is that sometimes a patient dies in spite of a good physician and good medicine. Thus, without the protection of the Lord, one cannot live with or without parents. Another point in this verse is that fathers and mothers have protective feelings for their children, even in bird and beast society, not to speak of human society. Kali Yuga, however, is so degraded that a father and mother even kill their children in the womb on the plea of their scientific knowledge that within the womb the child has no life. Prestigious medical practitioners give this opinion, and therefore the father and mother of this day kill their children within the womb. How degraded human society has become. Their scientific knowledge is so advanced that they think that within the egg and the embryo, there is no life. Now, these so-called scientists are receiving Nobel Prizes for advancing the theory of chemical evolution. But if chemical combinations are the source of life, why don't the scientists manufacture something like an egg through chemistry and put it in an incubator so that a chicken will come out? What is their answer? With their scientific knowledge, they are unable to create even an egg. Such scientists are described in Bhagavad Gita as Maya ya Parita Jnanaha, fools whose real knowledge has been taken away. They are not men of knowledge, but they pose as scientists and philosophers, although their so-called theoretical knowledge cannot produce practical results. So we have seen many examples of this and these kind of uh, uh, comparisons in earlier discussions around in earlier chapters also. Today morning I was just listening to a class lecture by Radhesham Prabhu, and in that lecture he was speaking about Prabhupada asking, telling one of his disciples or someone else around this coconut tree. He was giving the example of a coconut tree. Now, a coconut tree has these coconuts which contains sweet water. So one might ask, how does that coconut tree actually convert water into sweet water? And Prabhupada then actually says that, if I give you, if you want to pump up the water, you typically have to use a motor or a pump. But it doesn't do both the jobs, right? It doesn't make that water that is pumped up also sweet. And you might say that, plants have roots, and through those roots, it's able to take that water and push it up, and then it goes and rests in the coconut. And we were to ask you then is that, what would you do if I'll give you those roots? Are you able to still manufacture a coconut and then get water into it and make that water sweet? So no matter what, we try, we will not be able to achieve that, right? So and that is where he says, but if chemical combinations are the source of life, why don't scientists manufacture something like an egg through chemistry and put it in an incubator so that a chicken will come? And as much as scientists will try to achieve this, they might never be able to achieve it. So again, this is due to our false perception or our false thinking, the illusion that we live in, that we can control and we are the owners over here, we are the proprietors. That mentality actually also brings about this thinking that we can manufacture things that we may never be able to manufacture. At the end of the day, everything on planet Earth is provided for by God, Krishna. Nothing is there which we have created. And whatever has been created also, the source for that again is Krishna. But we live in under that false illusion and under the perception that I have created this or this is mine. Let's continue reading. Evam kulingam vilapantamarat priyaviyoga turam ashru kantham sa evatam shaku nikasharena divyada kala rahito vilina. Translation: because of the loss of his wife, the Kulinga bird lamented with tears in his eyes. Meanwhile, following the dictations of mature time, the hunter, who was very carefully hidden in the distance, released his arrow, which pierced the body of the Kulinga bird and killed him. So here the bird is lamenting for the wife, and in the meanwhile, the hunter kills the bird. And this is the eventuality for all of us. The message here is that we should not be unnecessarily lamenting over material losses, as in that time, eventually, our time in this world is limited. We need to keep that in mind. So our time, we have been given a material body, and we are very, very fortunate to have a human birth. And by not utilizing this human body and this life that we have properly for the right purpose, for that higher purpose, we will end up wasting our time in this body. And time doesn't wait for anyone. Eventually, time will get to you. So it is our choice what we want to do with this life and how do we utilize it. And as in the case of this particular bird, the bird chose to just lament, and in that process ended up losing his own life. Text 51. Does someone want to read the text, the translation, and the purport, please? Hare Krishna.
Correction.
Yes, Prabhu.
Go ahead, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhu. Please go ahead, Prabhu.
Okay, Prabhuji. Translation. The Yam Raja in the guise of the small boy told all the queens, "You are all so foolish that you lament but do not see your own death. Afflicted by a poor fund of knowledge, you do not know that even if you lament for your dead husband for hundreds of years, you will never get him back alive. And in the meantime, your lives will be finished." Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Purport also.
Prabhu, you please read the purport also.
Purport. Yam Raja once asked Maharaja Yudhishthira, "What is the most wonderful things within this world?" Maharaja Yudhishthira replied, "Mahabharata, Banparaha 313.116. Shall I read this, Prabhuji?
Yes, Prabhu. Continue.
Anyani bhutani gachantiha yamalyam shesha savaram ichanti kim acharyam atah param. Hundreds and thousands of living entities meet death at every moment, but a foolish living being nonetheless thinks himself deathless, and does not prepare for death. This is the most wonderful thing in this world. Everyone has to die because everyone is fully under the control of material nature. Yet everyone thinks that he is independent, that whatever he likes he can do, that he will never meet death, but live forever, but live forever, and so on. So-called scientists are making various plans by which living entities in the future can live forever. But while they are thus pursuing such scientific knowledge, Yamaraja in due course of time will take them away from their business of so-called research. Hare Krishna. Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. It's a very short purport, but it's quite powerful, right? When Prabhupada says that, but while they are pursuing their scientific knowledge, Yamaraja in due course of time will take away from their business of so-called research. So in this verse, actually, Yamaraja first is admonishing the queens, pointing about their foolish lamentation over the body, right? And we see that life is temporary and death is inevitable. Yet we continue to live in this illusion, just as Prabhupada is mentioning here, that everyone has to die because everyone is under the full control of material nature. Yet everyone thinks that he is independent, that whatever he likes he can do, that he will never meet death, but live forever, and so on. And it's true for everyone. At least even I also suffer from this. And today after this class, I will start thinking about maybe my material goals and material challenges or material problems and get sucked into it. So this misidentification of who we are is so strong that as long as we are in this body, Maya is going to be continuously attacking us from all sides. And if we are not vigilant, Maya will capture us. And we will forget our purpose, who we are, and again fall into this kind of a cycle wherein we start believing that whatever we like, we can do, that we will be able to maybe overcome death, maybe live forever, prolong our lives, and so on, and indulge in all sorts of material engagements to further these desires and advance these desires. So, as Prabhupada is giving this teaching from the Mahabharata, we need to keep in mind that it's only the foolish person who believes he is immortal despite witnessing daily deaths. So I just returned from a trip from Ayodhya and Varanasi. And in Varanasi, when you go across these ghats, the Harishchandra Ghat and the Manikarnika Ghat, you will see so many dead bodies are there, they are being burned. In fact, in Varanasi, if you're on a street, invariably you will pass at least few dead bodies where will be being taken for cremation. And we were near this, the temple, Kashi Vishwanath temple. And as we were just queuing up, in that short span of time, we saw around 4 to 5 bodies that were being taken for cremation. And during those moments, we actually begin reflecting, right? And those are the moments when we start reflecting about who we are, what is life, on the impermanence of life. But then when we come back to our daily lives, where we go to our jobs and we are back in these big cities, concrete jungles we live in, all those reflections are forgotten. And that is where, as long as we are in this body, around us, we will be getting attacked by all these sense objects that will lure us to thinking about us being different from who we are actually. And this is where it's so important for us to actually indulge in these practices, which can help us keep reminding ourselves of our eternal constitutional position as a servitor of God. And that is through the practices of Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, doing chanting, hearing Harikatha, hearing about Krishna, hearing about the stories of the Lord, sharing the stories of the Lord, and associating ourselves with devotees. So your efforts that you are putting in to get up early in the morning, participate in Mangalarti, join the Srimad Bhagavatam classes, is all in the right steps. And we need to encourage also all other people, our family members whom we know, to get into this track, because otherwise people will continue to remain in those material environments which are not conducive. So even like I keep pushing my child, my daughter, to get up early in the morning, to chant a few rounds, to listen to some classes or to read a little bit, so that that is the only way they will advance in their spiritual lives. So here also there is a responsibility that all of us have, is to also to push people around us, just like we have been pushed by other devotees also, like Lilananda Prabhu and other senior devotees. We also need to continue to do that we can help people come out of this false illusion that they are the controllers. Text 58 and 59 will deal about the understanding of the material impermanence. So now Hiranyakashipu will start speaking. Yes, Mataji, you can reach the sloka, the translation, and the purport also.
Shri Hiranyakashipuruvacha Bala evam prabhati sve vismiteta saha nadayo menire sarvam anityam ayotitham. Translation. Hiranyakashipu was instructing all the relatives surrounding the mother philosophical. Everything material is temporary, not continuing to exist. This is confirmed in Antavata ime deha nityashoktaha sharirinaha.
Mataji, your voice is not clear. Is it only to me, Prabhuji?
No, Mataji, Prabhu, even I was thinking the same. I'm also not able to hear very clearly.
Okay, 1 minute. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Is it audible now?
Much better, Mataji. Yes, please continue.
This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 2.18. Antavanta ime deha nityashoktaha sharirinaha. The body is perishable, but the soul within the body is imperishable. Therefore, the duty of those advanced in knowledge in human society is to study the constitutional position of the imperishable soul and not waste the valuable time of human life in merely maintaining the body and not considering life's real responsibility. Every human being should try to understand how the spirit soul can be happy and where he can attain an eternal blissful life of knowledge. Human beings are meant to study these subject matters, not to be absorbed in caring for their temporary body, which is sure to change. No one knows whether he will receive a human body again. There is no guarantee. For according to one's work, one may get any body, from that of a demigod to that of a dog. In this regard, Srila Madhvacharya comments, Aham mamabhim ananditva yathottam anityakam mahadadi yathottam cha nitya chapi yathotthitam. अश्वन्तत्रैव प्रकृतिः स्वतन्त्रो नित्य एव च भूताश्च पर एक एव जनार्दनः. Only Janardana, the supreme personality of Godhead, is ever existing, but his creation, the material world, is temporary. Therefore, everyone who is captivated by the material energy and absorbed in thinking, I am this body, and everything belonging to this body is mine, is in illusion. One should think only of being eternally a part of Janardana and one's endeavor in this material world, especially in this human form of life, should be to attain the association of Janardana by going back home, back to Godhead. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Thank you so much. So here the relatives now are enlightened by Yamaraja's words, and they are understanding now the temporary nature of the body. As Prabhupada mentions in the purport in the Bhagavad Gita 2.18, we understand that the material body is perishable, but the soul is eternal. The soul never dies. But due to this false identification of ours, we begin to think that we are this body, and when this body is lost, we begin lamenting for it. As Prabhupada says, the duty of those advanced in human knowledge in human society is to study the constitutional position of the imperishable soul and not waste the valuable time of human life in merely maintaining the body and not considering life's real responsibility. What is the life's real responsibility? And most of us who are on today's in this lecture, in this class today, have been there for quite some time, and I think we understand this, or if we were to be asked, I think we will be able to say that yes, we know that the soul is eternal and we are the soul, we are not this body. But what we need to keep in mind is that we realize this, or we remember this perhaps, and at least this is in my case, I can say that is that when I'm studying these matters or discussing these subject matters. But the moment I'm not, I'm indulging in this, which is to care for the temporary body. And when I'm doing that, of course, I've forgotten about who I really am. And I get sucked into that more and more. And as I had said, as long as we are in this material body, we will be forced to react to those sense objects. And if our practice, our sadhana is not strong, we will be giving in to those allurements that are coming in our way, or is going to be hitting us. Please keep in mind, as Prabhupada says, no one knows whether we will receive a human body again. There is no guarantee. Or according to one's work, one may get any body of that of a demigod to that of a dog. So the next life we are going to get, Prabhuji's and Mataji's, is not certain. It can be anything. And if we don't utilize our time in this life productively and in the right way, we don't know what is in store in our next life for other karmas that we might still have and have not been extinguished or not exhausted still. And when we get into those bodies, we might not even be fortunate to listen to these lectures or understand. We might not have that knowledge also. So please, please, please utilize this time well, that utilize this time that we have in this material body well, for we don't know how much time we have, and if we don't know in this body, but also we don't know what is in store for us in our next life. Let's continue reading verse 59. Yama etat upakhya tatraivantar dhiyata gnatayo hi suyajnasya chakrur yat samparayikam. Translation. After instructing all the foolish relatives of Suyajna, Yamaraja, in the form of a boy, disappeared from their vision. Then the relatives of King Suyajna performed the ritualistic funeral ceremonies.
Prabhuji, can I read 61?
Yeah, 60. Please read text 60, Mataji, first. Text
60.
60. Yes, yes.
अतः शोचतमायूयं परं चात्मानमेव वा क आत्मा कः परो वात्र स्वीयः पारभ्य एव वा निवेशेन विनज्ञानेन देहिनां. Translation by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Therefore, none of you should be aggrieved for the loss of the body, whether your own or those of others. Only in ignorance does one make bodily distinctions, thinking, who am I? Who are the others? What is mine? What is for others? Purport. In this material world, the conception of self-preservation is the first law of nature. According to this conception, one should be interested in his personal safety and should then consider society, friendship, love, nationality, community, and so on, which have all developed because of the bodily conception of life and a lack of knowledge of the spirit soul. This is called ajnana. As long as human society is in darkness and ignorance, men will continue to make huge arrangements in the bodily conception of life. Ruji, can you scroll down? Yeah. This is described by Prahlad Maharaj as bharam. In the materialistic conception, modern civilization makes enormous arrangements for huge roads, houses, mills, and factories. And this is man's conception of the advancement of civilization. People do not know, however, that at any time they themselves may be kicked out of the scene and forced to accept bodies that have nothing to do with these enormous houses, palaces, roads, and automobiles. Therefore, when Arjuna was thinking in terms of his bodily relationships with his kinsmen, Krishna immediately chastised him, saying, Kutastva kashmalam idam vishame samupasthitam anarya jushtam. This bodily conception of life is befitting the anaryas, the non-Aryans, who are not advanced in knowledge. Can you scroll down? Yeah. An Aryan civilization is a civilization advanced in spiritual knowledge, not merely by stamping oneself an Aryan does not become an Aryan. Not merely by stamping oneself an Aryan does not become an Aryan. To keep oneself in the deepest darkness concerning spiritual knowledge and at the same time claim to be an Aryan is a non-Aryan position. In this connection, Srila Madhvacharya quotes as follows from the Brahma Vaivarta Purana. क आत्म कः पर इति देहाद्य अपेक्षया न हि देहादिरात्मा स्यान् न च शत्रुरुदीरिता अतो दैहिकवृद्धौ वा क्षये वा किं प्रयोजनम् यस्तु देहगतो जीव स हि नाशं न गच्छति ततः शत्रुविवृद्धौ च स्वनाशे शोचनं कुतः देहादिव्यतिरिक्तौ तौ जीवेशौ प्रतिजानता अत आत्मा विवृद्धिस्तु वासुदेवे स्थिरा शत्रुनाशस्तथा ज्ञान नाशो नान्य कथंचन. The purport is that as long as we are in this human form of body, our duty is to understand the soul within the body. The body is not the self. We are different from the body, and therefore there is no question of friends, enemies, or responsibilities in terms of the bodily conception of life. One should not be very anxious about the body's changing from childhood to boyhood, from boyhood to old age, and then to apparent annihilation. Rather, one should be very seriously concerned about the soul within the body and how to release the soul from the material clutches. The living entity within the body is never annihilated. Therefore, one should surely know that whether one has many friends or many enemies, his friends cannot help him, and his enemies cannot do him any harm. One should know that he is a spirit soul, Aham Brahmasmi, and that the constitutional position of the soul is unaffected by the changes of the body. In all circumstances, everyone, as a spirit soul, must be a devotee of Lord Vishnu and should not be concerned with bodily relationships, whether with friends or with enemies. One should know that neither we ourselves nor our enemies in the bodily conception of life are ever killed. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you so much. So here, Hiranyakashipu is speaking about the bodily conceptions of life, and he condemns the distinctions based on the body, calling them products of ignorance. In the Bhagavad Gita in verse 2.13, Krishna says, Dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tatha dehantara prapter dhiras tatra namuhyati, which is basically speaking about the embodied soul transmigrating. It continuously passes in this body from youth to old age. And similarly, the soul at the time of death passes from one body to another. And a person who is sober, a sober person who has this knowledge is not bewildered by such a change. But a person on the flip side, actually, who is not aware, who does not have this knowledge, of course, will be an ignorant person. And they will start having these distinctions based on body. So what does this bodily conception of life lead to? I think this is another thing that we need to keep in mind, is that the more we get sucked into this bodily conception of life, it will lead to, one is very clearly, it leads to selfishness. This whole concept of me, mine, I, that all starts with this bodily conception of life. And that's when the selfishness comes into it. This is mine. Why should I give something to somebody? Why should I? This is mine. I should not be giving this. I should not be paying so much money for a particular thing. Again, this is my money, right? And it also leads to divisions, of course. As I had said earlier, this whole thing around concept of, when once we start identifying with this body, I am Indian, you are American, you are German, you are Australian, I'm black, you are white, I'm brown. So these divisions are created in that process. So one is sufferings are created due to that selfishness. So sorry, selfishness is happening because of this bodily conception of life, and then divisions start happening. And as an outcome of both of this, suffering start happening, right? That pain starts happening. And that pain is within us, right? Who is hurting inside? It's the soul that is actually hurting, because it is not a natural environment for that soul to be in. And that is why you experience that pain, you experience that unhappiness. But because we are in that false illusion, we assume that that pain can go away if we start achieving what we think is happiness. And in the material sense, what is that happiness? Material sense, happiness can be more money, right? Or an acknowledgement or a confirmation of who you are and why you are great or why you are good. These things help us believe furthermore and identify with this bodily concept of life. So please keep this in mind. Again, very important. I would say these chapters, the verses actually help us a lot in the self-reflection, I think. So I hope all of you are also having an opportunity to reflect on this. We'll conclude with the final verse of the chapter. Prabhuji or Mataji, anyone wants to read the last final verse?
I will read,
Translation
Prabhuji.
and
Hare
purport.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandapranam. Srinarada uvacha iti daityapatervakyam ditir akarnya sanusha putrasokam putrashokam kshanat tektva tatte chittam adaryat. Translation. Sri Narada Muni continued. Diti, the mother of Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha, heard the instructions of Hiranyakashipu along with her daughter-in-law, Rishabhanu, Hiranyaksha's wife. She then forgot her grief over her son's death and thus engaged her mind and attention in understanding the real philosophy of life. Purport. When a relative dies, one certainly becomes very much interested in philosophy. But when the funeral ceremony is over, one again becomes attentive to materialism. Even Daityas who are materialistic persons sometimes think of philosophy when some relative meets death. The technical term for this attitude of the materialistic person is smashana vairagya, or detachment in a cemetery or place of cremation. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, 4 classes of men receive an understanding of spiritual life and God. Artha, the distressed; Jignasu, the inquisitive; Abdarthi, one who desires material gains; and Gnani, one who is searching for knowledge. Especially when one is very much distressed by material conditions, one becomes interested in God. Therefore, Kunti Devi said in her prayers to Krishna that she preferred distress to a happy mood of life. In the material world, one who is happy forgets Krishna or God, but sometimes if one is actually pious but in distress, he remembers Krishna. Queen Kunti Devi therefore preferred distress because it is an opportunity for remembering Krishna. When Krishna was leaving Kunti Devi for his own country, Kunti Devi regretfully said that she was better off in distress because Krishna was always present. Whereas now that the Pandavas were situated in their kingdom, Krishna was going away. For a devotee, distress is an opportunity to remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead constantly. Thus, the end of the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 7th canto, 2nd chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Hiranyakashipu, King of the Demons. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. This is the final verse, and here what we see is that Diti and Bhanu, who is Hiranyakashipu's sister-in-law, are inspired by these instructions now, and they engage their minds in spiritual understanding, right? And through the purport, as we are reading from what Prabhupada is saying, is that tragedy will often inspire us to introspect on spiritual growth. He speaks about this concept of smashana vairagya, which is detachment, which is born in graveyards. But he is also urging us that it's the importance of sustaining this particular detachment that we build. This smashana vairagya should not just be limited to happening in the smashana. The moment we come out into material life, everything is forgotten, and then we going back to what we usually do. So it's important to also sustain that spiritual focus beyond grief and beyond the graveyard there, right? When we are there. So he says that especially when one is very much distressed by material conditions, one becomes interested in God, right? And therefore, Kunti Devi said in her prayers to Krishna that she preferred distress to a happy mood of life. My situation is not so evolved wherein I can say that I prefer distress, but I think, and this is where it's very important for us to keep in mind that we need to keep reminding ourselves, and this is where the process that has been given to us by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Kali Yuga is very, very important. To continue to chant the holy name, continue to listen about the glories of the holy name, to remember the holy God name, Krishna, and to associate with devotees will all help us in overcoming these material conditions that kind of continue to trap us. So to summarize the chapter very quickly, so what we see in this chapter is Hiranyakashipu's grief. Actually, it transforms into a philosophical discourse. It's very interesting that we have many Hiranyakashipu type personalities in this Kali Yuga, but we don't see any of these personalities actually evolving into or actually getting into any kind of philosophical discourse. So clearly Hiranyakashipu is also at a more advanced stage than the Hiranyakashipus of this modern Kali Yuga. We also read and discussed about the impermanence of the body and the internal nature of the soul. While we have read this umpteen number of times in the scriptures that we are studying, this is reiterated again in this chapter. And this was very well illustrated through those two stories that were narrated. One was of Suyajna and the other was of the Kulinga birds, which kind of illustrate the futility of material attachment and lamenting over material losses. And finally, we had Yamaraja's instructions, which actually serve as a reminder of life's temporary nature and the need for having a spiritual focus in our lives. So clearly, let's keep in mind again and keep reminding ourselves to detach from the body by attaching to a higher purpose. Remember that the body is temporary, the soul is eternal. We are fully dependent on Krishna. I think this is another thing that we need to keep in our mind. And that material arrangements that happen are secondary. We are fully dependent on Krishna for protection. Okay, so one who is protected by Krishna, no one can harm him. And one who is not protected by Krishna, right, no one will be able to protect him. And we also discussed around the purpose of our life, our eternal constitutional position to be the servitor of God. So it's very, very important that we realize this. And I'm sure all of us have realized that, but to keep reminding ourselves of this, that for us, what is the higher purpose and what is that ultimate goal that we are seeking or we should be seeking, and that all these material achievements that we have in our lives are all fleeting and very, very temporary in nature. And we keep reminding ourselves that grief overall is a great teacher also. So when we have any kind of grief or pain, it's important for us to use those moments of loss or of pain to deepen our spiritual connection to Krishna. So leverage upon those. And with that, I'll conclude the class, and maybe since we have a little bit of time, this was a short section that I have completed. I would also like to invite you for any comments, but also any reflections on, how can we practice seeing ourselves as eternal souls? Maybe this is a question that I had in mind and I would like to ask you, is that how can we practice seeing ourselves as eternal souls rather than being just pure material bodies? So I'll stop sharing my screen and maybe you can unmute yourselves and share your thoughts and comments. I'll maybe first invite if Lilananda Prabhu is there for his comments. Lilananda Prabhu. Hare Krishna. I don't see anyone else. Prabhuji's, Mataji's, please would like to share your reflections, thoughts.
Prabhuji, Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavad Pranam. My name is
Dandavad.
Your servant Raghunandan Das here.
Hare Krishna.
One thing, one takeaway for me from this class today is that Prabhuji, you said, as long as I'm in this class, I'm good with all these principles. And after that, I will be sucking up in my material things. So the thing appeals to me is, Prabhuji, as long as we are with devotees, it's like a plane going with a constant speed of 800 kilometers per hour. But if there are not devotees, the plane is ultimately declining. So, Prabhuji, the key to me is looks like being with devotees as much as we can, Prabhuji. Be it 1 hour reading or Deepa Mataji in this class, constantly reminds people that there is a chanting thing at 4:30 a.m. at one time and 9 a.m. at one time. Yes, we are all vulnerable to Maya. So, like this, like many Vaishnavas in this group, keep engaging in various activities throughout the day. So, some hours are really reminding us to be in association and maintain the speed. That appealed very much to me, Prabhuji, that.
Hare Krishna. Hare Bol. Thank you so much, Prabhu, for sharing your reflections. And this is very useful. I'll keep that in mind. Like, we are in a plane traveling at 800 kilometers. As long as we are in the association of devotees, and the moment that association goes away, the plane starts descending into this material world once again. Thank you so much. Any other thoughts, any other reflections from anyone else? I think this is very, very useful for everyone. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Dandot
Yes,
Pranam.
Mataji. Dandot Pranam, Mataji.
Yeah, I used to remind myself and by chanting one round particular intervals of time, like at 5 o'clock in the morning and 9 o'clock in the middle of the day at 1:30, evening 5:30, and night before sleep also. So, like I used to divide the my chanting rounds 1, 3, 6, 9, 16 like that. Extra rounds apart from the 16 rounds, so that I used my mind will not go away. And whenever my mind is going to suck into the like watching TV and all those things, I used to divert by chanting internally also. Immediately in a 1 to 2 minutes, I'll come to myself. Like that, I used to practice Prabhuji.
Haribol Mataji. Yes. The name is not different from the Supreme Lord Himself. And when we chant the names, holy names, with that attention, with the focus, and with that attitude of surrender, we can experience that connection. I'm not very good at it, but at those moments when I have tried to keep that focus and that attention, reminding myself of who I am, I do experience that, uh, that I feel at least much more positive, and that I'm moving ahead. Thank you so much, Mataji. Yes, Harer Naam eva kevalam, kalvanaste eva kalvanaste eva. Atiranyata. Yes, it's very, very important, Mataji. In this world, in this Kali Yuga, there is no other solution for us. And as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has said, that he has given us the holy names, the Mahamantra. Let's hold on to the holy name. Let's hold on to the Mahamantra. And let's hold on to association. And catch the dhotis and feet of senior devotees, of the acharyas, of the spiritual master, to help us get out of this ocean, this material ocean of ignorance. Thank you
Krishna
so much,
Prabhuji,
Mataji.
there's one thing I would like to add.
Yes, Mataji.
Actually, I found that reading Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam, not by self, but I do certain one-on-ones. Like I have teamed up one with Shilpa Mataji for Chaitanya Charitamrita, with Sandhya Mataji for Bhagavatam. Like one-on-one, when you are discussing, it absorbs better. But Bhagavatam, association of Bhagavatam is very purifying in nature. And it always keeps you grounded because it always reminds you of the greatness of Krishna. The only way you can remember that you are soul and he is the super soul is when you are in constant association of Bhagavatam. That's my personal experience.
Yes, Mataji. Very good. Discussing in small groups is definitely, a
It is
beautiful
very,
way.
yeah, it's a very focused approach
Yes,
because I
yes.
have seen like reading in a large group and reading like one-on-one or 2:1 and things like that. It is much more personal, and you are able to stop when you are in doubt and you can explore what is the answer. You are not in a hurry to complete that particular purport or something like that. It's really wonderful.
Yes,
And
Mataji. And yeah, Mataji, sorry. Please complete.
yeah, that's all. Very purifying. It feels very purifying. I don't know whether I should say that or not, but that is my personal experience. It gives me a very calming effect.
Yeah, Mataji, and it's true. I've also experienced that, and here we have small groups wherein we do Bhagavatam readings, and we just take one verse. We read the verse, we read the purport, and we have a discussion, sharing reflections. In our modern world, and for those of you who are in HR or in OD, you would have come across on the concepts of coaching, wherein one of the fundamental rules of coaching is not to tell the other person what to do, but actually just ask questions and allow the persons to reflect. And the thinking behind that is that everyone has the answers. And if I were to draw that parallel into our spiritual sadhana, all of us are jivas, are those eternal souls. And we have that Satchitananda in us, but we have forgotten our identity. By asking questions, by invoking that curiosity within us to ask questions, but to also to reflect, will help us to, to hopefully scrub off a little bit of that dirt that is sitting on that mirror, and we are in our hearts, where it is not preventing us from seeing who we actually are. So absolutely right, Mataji, and I also fully agree with you on what you just shared. I would also encourage everyone to continue to actually to explore such smaller groups, and it can be just coming together with your near and dear ones also and discussing one verse and having a short discussion. It will force you to think and force you to reflect. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Yes, we have come across now the association was important. Reading Srimad Bhagavatam and other scriptures one to one or together is important. Yeah, and one more thing, actually, maybe a Shravanam hearing also would be the important, so that to keep us in constant association, constant, not only constant, is to keep us in Krishna conscious, or to keep to tell ourselves that we are a part of the super soul and all. So yeah, that is what one thing. Actually, the reading Bhagavatam itself means that, but hearing Shravanam is also important, so that we can constantly remind ourselves that we are a part of super soul and all, and to keep us in Krishna consciousness.
Yes, Prabhu. And
Yeah, reading is also same actually. Yeah, but hearing also.
Hearing is
Reading
equally
is
important, Prabhu. Yeah. And we are very, very fortunate and lucky to have a treasure trove of so many lectures. So you go to ISKCON Desire, or you can go to YouTube, and there are so many lectures that are available by very, very senior devotees, advanced devotees. On various topics, there are various themes. So not only just purely just reading a particular verse, but there are discourses on themes, and on any matter, any life topic is covered. And that is the advantage that we have, is that we have an ocean, a wealth of knowledge that is sitting and in the form of these audio recordings, in the form of Vani. So while Vapu is important, Vani is also an equally important method for us to purify ourselves. So hearing these discourses from other Vaishnavas is a definite way. So use your time. Like I use it when I'm commuting to work, when I'm exercising in the morning. I use that time to listen to lectures. And also, for example, even when I'm showering, actually, I take a small Bluetooth audio device and I allow one lecture to play also. So use all the time that you have to listen to Harikatha. Thank you so much, Akinchana Prabhu, for sharing that.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Any other closing thoughts from anyone, Matajis and Prabhujis, or we can also then close the class? It's 11 minutes time now. It's 8:45. Hare Krishna. So if there are no more further comments, I'll close this class. I'll wish you all a very spiritually surcharged weekend. Let's continue to chant the Maha Mantra and take the association of devotees that should hopefully lead us to that path of transcendence. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you,
Vacha-
Prabhuji. Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you. Thank you,
Dandavad.
Mataji. Dandavat pranam. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah ananta koti vaishnavvrind ki jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.